Welcome back to Part B of Topic 4 lecture. In the first part of this lecture, we have covered the first 5 learning objectives, and we've gone through the 4 steps in the preparation of a production report using the weighted average method under process costing. So in Part B of this lecture, we will continue with learning objective 6 and 7, and we will also go through some problems and exercises so that we can apply what we have learned so far. So as a recap, Part A of this lecture ended up with learning objective 5, where we analyzed the total production costs for a department under the weighted average method of process costing, and we have accounted for the total costs of the production using process costing. So now let us move to learning objective 6, where we are actually preparing the departmental production report under the weighted average process costing. We have now completed, as you will recall, all the 4 steps necessary to prepare a production report. So the report simply combines the tables prepared in previous slides. So the report will provide a convenient summary of all the process costing calculations made under the weighted average method. As you can see here, the 4 steps of process costing is shown in this production report. The first part is where we can see the physical units calculation, then the equivalent units that we have shown in the second step, and then the calculation of the cost per equivalent unit as shown in this part, and finally the analysis of the cost as shown in this last part of the production report. So we have the total cost to account for as shown here, and the total cost accounted for as shown in this part of the departmental production report. All right. Recall too that weighted average process costing is called as such because the cost per equivalent unit for both the direct material is found here, the cost per equivalent unit for both direct material and the conversion costs are computed as weighted average of the costs incurred during 2 accounting periods. So the 2 periods that we are referring to are the previous period, previous month, and the current period, current month. All right, moving on. Before we get to an exercise to apply what we have learned, I'd like to reintroduce to you the concept of actual versus normal costing. Recall that in topic 3, we have been using normal costing all along, and that is when the manufacturing overhead is applied to work in process inventory using a predetermined overhead rate, POR. In the illustrations that we have done in topic 4, we are again using normal costing. So we are also applying manufacturing overhead using a predetermined overhead rate. The actual costing, on the other hand, you would remember, is when the actual cost of manufacturing overhead are assigned to work in process inventory. So which of these 2 costing methods are used in the normal course of operation? Most of the time it is normal costing. All right. It's important to note, though, that both actual and normal costing can be used in conjunction with a process costing system. So even though our illustrative examples use normal costing, you could still use actual costing in process costing as well as job order costing. So let's just once again summarize the 4-step process that we have learned. So, in order to prepare a departmental production report, the 4 steps are: first, we analyze the physical flow of the units. Next, we calculate the equivalent units. Third, we will then compute the unit costs. And finally, we will analyze the total costs. Let us apply this 4-step process in problem 426 from your textbook. We have here a company called Piscataway Plastics Company. They manufacture highly specialized plastic that is used extensively in the automobile industry. The following data have been compiled for the month of June. Conversion activity occurs uniformly throughout the production process, as we are told. So we are provided there with the work in process, beginning balance on June 1st, details, including the number of units and the costs for both direct material and conversion. We are also told how many units were started during June and how many units were completed during the month and transferred to finished goods inventory. So we're assuming one department here. What else is provided? The work in process, June 30th, the ending balance of work in process are provided, and we are required to prepare schedules to accomplish each of the following process costing steps for the month of June. So we are asked, of course, to use the weighted average method of process costing. So let's start with step 1, analysis of physical flow of units. We'll start with the work in process June 1st. How many units are there? It is given here, 50,000 units, so we'll just put it there. Then the units started during June. Let us look for that figure and we can see it here. Units started during June is 200,000, so we'll put it there. And so the total units to account for is 250,000 units. Let's now move on to the next part. Units completed and transferred out during June. Is this figure given? Yes, it is given at 190,000, so we will put it there. What about the work in process June 30th? Is the number of units for work in process June 30 given? Well, it looks like they didn't give it. We are only provided with costs here. So does that mean we can't complete our analysis of physical flow of units? No, actually we can. Because if we know that the beginning work in process is 50,000 and we have started 200,000, then that means we should have 250,000 units in production. All right. Now, out of that 250,000 units, 190,000 were completed according to what is given. So how much is left in the work in process inventory at the end of June? Well, obviously, 250,000 minus 190,000, 60,000 units must have been left in the work in process at the end. So 60,000 units will be your ending balance of work in process. So as you can see, the total units accounted for would be 250,000 units, the same as the total units to account for. All right, let's move on to the calculation of equivalent units. The physical units column is now complete. All we have to do is to add the percentage of completion column and the equivalent units column for direct material and conversion. All right, we are told that the work in process is complete 40% for the conversion, 100% complete in direct materials. All right, but remember that 40% is really irrelevant when we're using weighted average method, but we'll just put it there as well. Let's move on to the units completed and transferred out during June. So we know that we have 190,000 units completed and transferred out. So 100% of that is the same as our equivalent units for direct materials and conversion. So 190,000. What about for work in process? Work in process, June 30th, it says here is 60% complete as to conversion. So we'll need to calculate the equivalent units for the work in process, 60%. All right. So how many would be the equivalent units for direct materials? Well, actually, the direct materials not 60% complete, is it? It says here that as to direct materials, it's 100% complete because, like we said, in many processes, the material is added at the beginning of the process. All right. So that means all the 60,000 units as to direct materials is complete, right? So 60,000 equivalent units for direct materials. It's in the conversion that we have that 60% completion. All right. So 60,000 multiplied by 60% will give you 36,000 equivalent units as to conversion. So now we can calculate the total equivalent units for direct materials. It's 190 plus 60,000 equals 250,000 units. For conversion, it is 190,000 plus 36,000 equals 226,000 units. All right, let's move on to the next requirement. Compute the unit costs. So let's do that. We'll need to calculate the unit cost for direct materials and conversion cost as well as the total. So we'll start with the work in process June 1. Where do we find that cost? Well, it is given here for direct materials. It's 120,000. What about the costs incurred during June? The direct material cost is 492,500, so we will put it there. And so we can total that up, and the total cost to account for in terms of direct materials would be 612,500. We will then divide it by the equivalent units that we've calculated in requirement 2 for direct materials. So that's 250,000. So 612,500 divided by 250,000 will give you $2.45 per equivalent unit of direct material. Let's move on to the conversion cost. For work in process June 1st, the conversion cost incurred were 34,400. So we'll just put it there. What about for the cost incurred during the month of June? We have here 87,450 plus 262,350, totaling up to 349,800. So we will put that figure there. We'll add up the conversion cost, and that would give us 384,200. Next, we'll divide that by the equivalent units that we have calculated in requirement 2 for conversion, which is 226,000 units. So once we've divided 384,200 by 226,000 units, we will get the cost per equivalent unit of $1.70. To calculate the total column, all we're doing is we're totaling up the cost for work in process, 120,000 plus 34,400. So that's 154,400. Cost incurred in June, 492,500 plus 349,800. So that's 842,300. And then we total up and we'll get 996,700. What about this total cost per equivalent unit? In the total column, all we're doing is we're adding 245 plus 170 equals $4.15. All right, we're done with requirement 3. Let's move on with requirement 4, analysis of total costs. So What is the cost of goods completed and transferred out during June? We should multiply the number of units transferred out, which we know is 190,000 units, by the total cost per equivalent unit, which we have calculated in requirement 3 at $4.15. So the product of 190,000 times $4.15 is 788,500. Next, we'll calculate the cost remaining in June 30 work in process inventory. So we'll start with direct materials. The number of equivalent units for direct material, which we have calculated to be 60,000 units, as shown here in requirement 2. We'll multiply that by the cost per equivalent unit for direct materials, which we calculate in requirement 3, $2.45, and that would give us $147,000. Now let's go to conversion cost. The number of equivalent units of conversion, which we've calculated here in requirement 2, 36,000, will be multiplied by the cost per equivalent unit for conversion, $1.70, and it will give us 61,200. So when we total up the direct material cost of 147,000 plus the conversion cost of 61,200 in our work in process inventory for June 30th, we'll get 208,200. Now to check if we actually get the figures correctly, let us check. Total up the cost of goods completed and transferred out, which is 788,500, plus the total cost of the work in process inventory at the end of June, 208,200, and we'll get 996,700, and that's the total cost accounted for. This should always equal the total cost to account for as shown in requirement 3. All right. So that is the step-by-step process in process costing using the weighted average method. Let's move on to learning objective 7, the final learning objective in topic 4. Here we will describe how an operation costing system accumulates and assigns the cost of direct material and conversion activity in a batch manufacturing process. Job order and process costing represent two polar extremes of product costing system. But some production processes exhibit characteristics of both job order and process costing environment. So these production processes often are referred to as batch manufacturing processes. Such processes are characterized by high volume production of several product lines that differ in some important ways but are nearly identical in other ways. Since batch manufacturing operations have characteristics of both job order costing and process costing environments, a hybrid product costing system is needed. So one common approach is called operation costing. So operation costing employs some aspects of both job order and process costing. So this product costing system is used when the conversion activities are very similar across the product lines, but the direct materials differ significantly. So what we're doing is that conversion costs will be accumulated by department, and the process costing methods are used to assign this cost to products. In contrast, the direct material costs are accumulated by job order or batch, and job order costing is used to assign the material cost to products. So Exhibit 4-10, as shown here, is an illustration of how operation costing works. You can see here that the conversion costs including, of course, direct labor and manufacturing overhead, will be accumulated by department. The direct material cost, however, will be accumulated by batch. All right. And so the conversion cost will be assigned to work in process inventory for each department. Say in this case, Department A and Department B. But as you can see, the direct material costs are traced according to the batches. And each of these batch can be just like jobs. All right. So direct material cost incurred for batch 1 will be traced to batch 1. Direct material cost for batch 2 will be traced to batch 2. And all direct materials that are traceable to batch 3 and batch 4, which are now in production department B, will be traced accordingly. All right. So let us have an example using operation costing in an illustrative example. Here is exercise 4-24 from your textbook. We are looking at the November production of MVP's Minnesota division. MVP is manufacturing basketballs. All right, so it says here that the November production consisted of batch P25, which is 2,000 units of professional basketballs, and batch S33, which consists of 4,000 scholastic basketballs. Now, each batch was started and finished during November, and there was no beginning or ending work in process. So that will keep our analysis much simpler. The costs incurred were given. Direct material for batch P25 is $42,000, and included there is $2,500 for packaging material. For batch S33, the direct material cost is $45,000. Conversion costs. We are told that the conversion cost for preparation department has predetermined rate of $7.50 per unit. For finishing department, the predetermined rate is $6 per unit, and for packaging department, the predetermined rate is 50 cents per unit. So what we can see here is that MVP's Minnesota division has 3 departments: the preparation department, the finishing department, and the packaging department. All right, but in parentheses here, it says that only the professional bowls are packaged. So the professional bowls pertains to batch P25, and it's only this batch that goes through all 3. It goes through preparation, finishing, and packaging. What about batch S33? Well, it looks like it doesn't go through the packaging division, and so it only goes through preparation and finishing department. So just 2 departments are utilized by batch S33. All right, so the first requirement asks us to draw a diagram depicting the division's batch manufacturing process, and we are asked to refer to exhibit 4-10 for guidance. So similar to the diagram that I have shown in the previous slide. So the diagram would look something like this. What are the costs accumulated by the department? It will be the conversion cost. So direct labor and manufacturing overhead will be allocated or applied to each department. So we'll have the work in process inventory for preparation department. We will also apply the conversion cost to work in process inventory finishing department, and we'll also apply conversion cost to work in process inventory packaging department. What about the costs that are accumulated by batch? We have direct material costs that can be traced directly to each batch. So we have direct materials that can be traced to batch P25, and we also have direct materials that can be traced directly to batch S33 in the preparation department. And because it says here that batch P25 has $42,000 of direct materials, including $2,500 for packaging materials, then that means there are also direct materials that will be traced directly to batch P25 that is in the packaging department. So that's why we have that line there, directly going to packaging department. Now, the procedure for manufacturing the bowls is that it starts with preparation department for batch P25, then it goes to finishing department, and then from finishing department, it goes to packaging department. Remember that only batch P25 goes through all three departments. So after batch P25 goes through finishing department, it goes through packaging department, and only once it's been packaged, then batch P25 will be transferred to finished goods inventory. Batch S33, on the other hand, only goes through preparation department, then to finishing department, and then after that, it goes straight to finished goods inventory. It does not need to be packaged. All right, so let's go to requirement number 2. We are asked to compute the November product cost for each type of basketball. For the professional basketball, which is batch P25, we will calculate the direct material cost. We can see from what is given that the material cost for batch P25 is $42,000. And how many units do we have for batch P25? We are told that there are 2,000 units. All right, so 42,000 divided by 2,000 units will give us $21. What about for batch S33? The direct material cost for batch S33 is $45,000, and the number of units for batch S33 is 4,000 units. So 45,000 divided by 4,000, that gives us $11.25. Now let's go to conversion cost. For the preparation department, the predetermined rate is $7.50 per unit. So we'll just put that one in for the professional or the P25. Does the S33 Scholastic also have to go through the preparation department? And the answer is yes. So therefore, we will also apply the conversion cost from preparation department to the Scholastic basketball, $7.50 per unit. Let's go to finishing department. The predetermined rate is $6 per unit. So we will be applying the conversion cost to professional for $6 per unit. And does the Scholastic basketball also go through the finishing department? And the answer is yes. So therefore, we will charge $6 as well. What about the packaging department? In packaging department, we have 50 cents predetermined rate. Does the professional bowl go through packaging department? Yes, it does. So it will be charged 50 cents. But what about the Scholastic bowls? It says that it doesn't go through packaging department, and so there will be $0 in the packaging department. So when we total up the cost for the professional bowl, we will be getting $35 per unit for each unit in batch P25. What about for each unit in batch S33? It will total up to $24.75, and that is the cost for the Scholastic bowl. All right, we are done with requirement 2. Let's go to requirement 3, the preparation of journal entries to record the cost flows during November. So let's go through the journal entries. We'll start with the journal entry in the preparation department, because as you can see in our diagram here, we start with preparation, then finishing, then packaging department, and then finished goods inventory. So our journal entry will follow through that cost flow. All right, we'll start with work in process inventory preparation department for the direct materials. We have been told that direct materials for batch P25 was $42,000, but it includes $2,500 for the packaging. All right, so therefore, to calculate the cost of raw materials in the preparation department, we'll deduct the 2,500 from 42,000, so we'll get 39,500. So we'll debit work in process inventory preparation department and credit raw material inventory for 39,500. So that's the journal entry for batch P25. Let's go to the journal entry for batch S33. We are told that the direct materials is $45,000, so we'll just debit work in process inventory preparation department for $45,000 and credit raw materials inventory for the same amount. We will now be preparing the journal entry for the conversion cost applied in the preparation department. So, how much is the conversion cost applied in the preparation department? Well, the predetermined overhead rate is $7.50 per unit. So the question is, how many units were going through the preparation department? Well, batch P25 has 2,000 units and batch S33 has 4,000 units. Therefore, the total of that is 6,000 units. All the professional and scholastic basketballs go through preparation department. And so all the 6,000 units will be applied $7.50 per unit of conversion cost. So that gives us $45,000. So our journal entry would be to debit work in process inventory preparation department and credit applied conversion cost for $45,000. Next, we'll now move to the finishing department. So we are done with the journal entries from work in process inventory preparation department. Then we go to the finishing department. We need here to calculate how much is the cost that is moving from preparation department to finishing department. So we'll calculate first the total cost incurred. We have 39,500 raw materials for batch P25 plus 45,000 the material cost for batch S33 plus another 45,000 for the applied conversion cost. Therefore, that's totaling 129,500. So all of that comes from preparation department to finishing department. So our journal entry would be to debit work in process inventory finishing department and credit work in process inventory preparation department for the amount of 129,500. All right. What do we do next? We now need to apply the conversion cost in the finishing department. So again, there are 6,000 units that go through the finishing department. At what rate? That's the question. Well, they told us that the finishing department predetermined rate is $6 per unit. So we'll just multiply 6,000 units times $6 per unit, and that gives us $36,000. So we'll just debit work in process inventory finishing department and credit applied conversion cost for $36,000. All right. The next journal entry will transfer those that we have completed in the finishing department to the packaging department for the batch that uses the packaging department. But for the batch that does not use the packaging department, batch S33, it will go straight to finished goods inventory. This is that part now that we're going to journalize. So how much will be transferred from finishing department for batch P25 to packaging department? And how much is the cost of batch S33 that will be moved from finishing department to finished goods department? That's what we need to calculate here. All right, let's calculate first batch P25. What's the cost incurred for batch P25 only? All right, well, we have incurred the $39,500 raw materials plus 2,000 units. Remember that batch P25 has 2,000 units. So 2,000 units times 750, the applied conversion cost for the preparation department, plus 2,000 units times the $6 predetermined overhead rate from finishing department. So that would give us a total of 66,500. So we will be debiting work in process inventory packaging department because we're moving the cost for P25, batch P25 from finishing to packaging department. All right. So we'll debit work in process inventory packaging department for 66,500, and the other batch, batch S33, will be moved from finishing direct to finished goods. So we'll need to debit finished goods inventory for that, as shown here. But the question is, how much is that? So let's calculate that. For batch S33, we know that we have incurred $45,000 worth of direct materials, which we have entered here. All right. What else? Well, 4,000 units in batch S33, the 4,000 units will have 750 applied conversion cost from the preparation department, plus another 4,000 units times $6, the predetermined rate for conversion cost in the finishing department was $6. So the total of that, 45,000 plus 4,000 times 750 plus 4,000 times $6 is 99,000. So that is the amount that we will transfer from finishing department to finished goods inventory. So debit finished goods inventory for 99,000, and what do we credit? We'll credit now the work in process inventory finishing department for the total amount of 165,500. All right. Next, in the packaging department, we would have incurred some raw materials, and again we'll apply some conversion costs. So let us look at that. Raw materials would be incurred. How much? It says here 2,500 because that's the packaging materials. All right. And conversion cost would be 50 cents per unit. So how many units is this batch that's going through the packaging? So there are 2,000 units there, right? So 2,000 units times 50 cents is 1,000. So our journal entry for the raw materials and the applied conversion cost would be to debit work in process inventory packaging department 3,500 and credit raw materials inventory for 2,500. Also credit applied conversion cost of $1,000. All right. So what do we do next? Once that's done in the packaging department, batch P25 will now move from packaging department to finished goods. And our journal entry for that would be to debit finished goods inventory and credit work in process inventory packaging department. Question is how much? Well, we've already calculated here that the cost of this batch P25 was 66,500 before going into packaging department. So we've incurred another 3,500 in packaging department. So the total cost for batch P25 will therefore be 66,500 plus 3,500 equals $70,000. So we'll debit finished goods inventory and credit work in process inventory packaging department for $70,000. All right. Well, we have come to the end of topic 4 lecture. And remember, at the beginning of this lecture, I have introduced to you the admonishment of King Solomon, that is, whatever our hands find to do, we should do it with all our might. That means to the best of our ability. But sometimes, you feel discouraged. And so I'd like to end by showing you this quote from the Apostle Paul in Galatians chapter 6, verse 9. The Apostle Paul encourages us by these words. He said, "And let us not grow weary in doing good, for in due season we shall reap if we do not lose heart." So my prayer is that even though at times you might find that, look, sometimes it's not worth it, there's too much work, there's too much things to do, let us not grow weary in doing good. Doing your studies, being diligent with your studies is good. Helping other people is being good. Showing mercy to others, being humble, and acting in a fair and just manner are all doing good. Do not grow weary, because it's a promise. In due season, we shall reap what we sow. Let us have a word of prayer before we end. Our most gracious Heavenly Father, we are so thankful that you are a God who hears and who wants what is best for us. Lord, at times we might grow weary in this world, but we know, oh Lord, that we have you taking care of all our needs. And we pray that we will not grow weary in doing good. For your promise is real, that in due season we will reap what we have sown. We ask once again, O Lord, your Holy Spirit dwell among each one of us. And may we always remain connected to you. No matter what, O Lord, may we put you right at the top, the priority of our lives. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. So I will be seeing you in class shortly. Bye for now.